the race was won. I'm Dane Cash. I'm joined by bike racing analyst extraordinaire Cosmo Catalano. But let's not waste too much time with introductions, bike racing analyst extraordinaire Cosmo Catalano, because, wow, I try not to be too hyperbolic, but that may have been the best Grand Tour stage I've seen, certainly this decade. We picked the right day to do our show. I'm glad I say that now. Hopefully the race doesn't change too much tomorrow.
That's true.
What
Anything
did
can
we
happen.
just watch? What's the headline, Cosmo Catalano, from week 3 of the Giro d'Italia?
That was a remarkable end to a remarkable Giro.
What an
Alternate
earnest
headline,
headline. I
just
love
like
it.
Matt White drew it up.
Yeah, I mean it. Wow. Let's get to the big moments of it, because going into this last week, we knew this was going to be hard. But yeah, at the end of the day, well, here, commenter Eric. I mean, this is Finestra never disappoints, but it didn't disappoint because of some things that happened. You want to take us through what it was that happened here?
Yeah, I can if I can find the right button here. Yeah. Okay. This is where I'm going to start it off. Almost all of the EF team at the side of the road having overshot this corner because they were so monomaniacally focused on driving the peloton into the foot of Colla della Finestra today. I mean, it is rare you see this on the last mountain stage of the Grand Tour, but that's what they did. They had one objective and one objective only. That was to destroy the entire peloton, so that right here they got Carapaz and Del Toro isolated against each other. And this is where things kind of get interesting, because we've seen this script in Grand Tours before, right? We've seen the leader and the contender, and they're mano a mano, and the contender's attacking the leaders, trying to follow him. Not uncommon. What made this interesting is what Simon Yates did. You'll see him very far in the background there. I don't know if you can make him out. He's at the head of a chase group, and he's pulling off. He's like, you know what? This is as hard as I want to go. There was a certain Escape Collective employee, I don't want to name any names, who said, lol, Yates didn't even make the lead group slightly prior to this moment, thinking that he was not as good as he needed to be today. And that was proven false.
Whoever this guy was, well, he didn't
Yep.
make the lead group here in this 45 to 1 minute,
Not only did he not make the lead group, he's pulling off, and then he's in the middle of the chase. He's not doing any work for a couple of seconds here, just kind of resting, sorting the race out.
Whoever this unnamed Escape employee is, he watched yesterday's stage. He saw Yates, I don't want to say throwing a tantrum, but the vibes weren't good in the post-race interview. He was throwing his team under the bus, and it was him who was unable to follow the moves at the end of the day. So I don't really know what he was complaining about. And then he gets dropped again. I mean, this to me was like,
did he get dropped, or did he just
maybe he just said, you know what, I'm not going to go that pace right now.
Yeah, right. I mean, he let the race unfold. He's riding his own thing.
Right? It was like, bad day. Maybe this is another bad day. Actually, you know what? Let me go win the Giro d'Italia.
Well, that's the thing, is he let that EF explosion happen, which was their plan. They executed perfectly. And then he was sort of like, let's see what the group does. I know what my legs can do. The group settled in, and he made one big move to get out of the group. Like, he didn't sit around and play with this group. And he came across, in a couple of seconds, and again, didn't sit around. This is a few seconds after he reached Del Toro and Carapaz, and he attacks right away. Carapaz chases him down. He does it again. Carapaz chases him down. He does it a third time, and I think Carapaz is a little sick of chasing him down with the race leader on his wheel. You'll see he's opening a gap. You'll also see Derek G is catching up. Derek G basically has to time trial this climb, right? He is not the speed up, slow down guy. So they kind of get lulled into this false sense of security at the front of the group. I think it makes sense until it doesn't. You also had some secret help. I don't know if Trek and Visma talked about this, but you've got Jacobo Mosca here. Jacobo Mosca doing a pretty tremendous pull for Yates. And then a couple of moments later, I'm actually going to show there as Del Toro and Carapaz catch people, Ethan Hayter's just kind of sitting on him here, and they have slowed way down. You might want to note that time gap there is 11 seconds. Going to move forward another K and a half, and we'll see not only is the time gap huge, but you have Mads Pedersen. He's sitting on the side of the road looking back, intentionally not doing anything to help these two after his teammate had helped Yates. Just all these factors kind of go into making that tiny Yates gap, which I think either of these riders could have closed 3, 4, 5, 6 more times on this climb, making that into a serious, serious problem.
We saw Carapaz, almost exclusively Carapaz, trying to pull, and then also he would occasionally attack. And whenever he did, Del Toro would go. He would follow him, get on his wheel. To me, that says Del Toro is feeling okay, but then he just wouldn't pull.
No, he did nothing. The only time Del Toro gets to the front on this climb is on this last extremely tight corner, and that's because Carapaz basically rides off the road.
Yeah.
So that the only alternative that Del Toro has is to go to the front of the race. And even then, he still doesn't really commit to working. And by this point, the gap is sizable. Like, it is borderline, virtual Maglia Rosa for Yates. It's like at a certain point, you have to realize that EF's BATNA. If you have ever negotiated, there's the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. That's basically your walkaway option. EF's walkaway option, they do nothing. They don't help at all. They completely defect. No collaboration with UAE. They drop from second overall to third overall.
Yeah.
That's not that big a deal. You're still on a podium on a Grand Tour. Carapaz has already won this race. He doesn't care that much if he drops from second to third, but dropping from winning the race to not winning the race, that's a huge, huge drop. You think someone in UAE would have said, hey man, I kind of sucks, but you're gonna have to bite the bullet here, pull through, take your turns. And it just never happened.
Yeah, let's get some context here. So first off, coming into this stage, Isak Del Toro has a lead of 43 seconds over Carapaz, 121 over Yates, which means Yates is going to have to get a big chunk of time to take this one. And it seemed to me going into the stage that Carapaz is the far more likely one to leapfrog Del Toro.
I want to point out, it isn't, he can do that. He can gain plenty of time on this climb. There's another climb afterwards,
right.
Not a huge one, but a big one, like Cat one, that is going to so there are lots of opportunities to keep that gap to Yates manageable.
Yes.
All they have to do is manage it, and they didn't.
So, okay, after they go over the top of the Fenestre, they do a descent, and then they arrive at the foot of the climb to Sestriere, which
I don't think
even 3. It's a long climb, and honestly, it sort of like ramps up about a third of the way in, and I feel like the climb from a third of the way in feels a decent amount harder than like the actual metrics tell you. And of course, they just did the Fenestre. So you've got this to come after they go over the top. If you're looking at the gap going over the top, you're like, all right, this is actually doable to chase Simon Yates down over the ensuing final 30K. I don't really fault Del Toro that much for his tactics. I don't really fault Carapaz at all, by the way. I think Carapaz rode a pretty smart race.
I think EF executed perfectly on a plan that they knew had a downside, and the downside wasn't that bad. Like, people are like, oh, what was EF doing? It's like, I think a pretty good job of trying to win this race.
Yeah, I think so too. But UAE going over the top, you'd think Del Toro finally says, okay, I have played chicken enough. It is time for me to do some work. What happens next? Because you've got the still right already telling us.
Well, we had Wout van Aert in the early break, which is not uncommon in a Grand Tour. What is uncommon is that, especially because Pedersen was there kind of as a foil, a literary foil here. You have these two big guys who can grind their way over climbs in the break, and they get into Fenestre. Pedersen gives it like the old college try, and Van Aert is immediately off the back, kind of riding up tempo, steady. And he's waiting in the valley, not even in the valley. Like, this is the kind of flatter bottom of the descent off Fenestre to get Yates. And you'll actually see, it doesn't show up as well as it could here because of the video controls, but Yates is riding out of the saddle, which he likes to do. I think he gets more power that way, kind of regardless of situation. But because he's got a Van Aert in front of him, he can stand up out of the saddle, riding downhill, this, 30 mile per hour, 50 kph section of course. And there's no one that UAE or no one that Del Toro or Carapaz has to provide that same service. They're they are, granted, it's Van Aert, right? There are like 3 other guys that can put out Van Aert watts for the necessary period of time. So once Van Aert makes connection here, it is like, everything should be code red, like super alarm. You're going to lose this race. And it wasn't like there weren't other cast-offs in the break. Here's Del Toro looking back to Carapaz to help. And it's like, again, Carapaz, why would he help? He's so worried that he's going to fall from second to third. Like, and then eventually Del Toro and Carapaz catch up with more cast-offs from the break. This is Timo Kilic from Alpecin. And you can see from the body language here, there is no urgency. They have basically given it up. Like, both parties have defected in this agreement. And that is pretty much the outcome of the overall right there.
Yeah. Eventually we get some UAE guys together and they just kind of give up. Like, it's a full-on admission.
Yeah, they catch up. The group catches back up. I didn't grab a screenshot of that, but it was still like the Micah was on the front, riding hard, making faces, but like the damage was so great. Like, how do you motivate when you're 5 minutes down and there's 7K to go up a not that hard climb? Like, it's just by that point the damage was done.
Over.
You know, they might as well finish 20 minutes back.
Yeah, which means the final gap maybe looks even worse than it was. But the fact that they didn't really do anything, the fact that Del Toro in particular didn't do anything, is a pretty serious indictment of his DSs, I think, for not telling him, hey, you got to go. Like, this is like I said earlier, I think it is excusable that he. Well, first of all, Carapaz was working on the Fenestre, so if Carapaz is going to do the work, fine, let him do the work. But
I mean, he was also attacking, so it wasn't like he was just towing. But eventually, he was like, "Hey, we should maybe work together." Like, you could see him looking back, like,
yeah.
And when he did that awkward corner, like, that was pretty clearly a look, pal. Just get up there, do some pedaling, please.
And yet, once that became, once it was code red, like you said, still no response from Del Toro. That's the moment where it's like, okay, like if going over the top of the Fenestra and then the next like 10 minutes or so, that was when this race was lost. I mean, honestly, this is more than most of the shows we've done in the last 3 years now. I would say this was how the race was lost as much as it's been how the race was won. I mean,
I'm always a little hesitant to do the race was lost, because it was a really well executed setup from Visma with Van Aert up the road, with the way Yates came across and made his differences. Like, it wasn't just like they lucked into it. It wasn't like Yates was riding and the two were bickering behind him and he turned around and happened to have 20-second gap. Like, he was pretty careful in how he applied that effort to get clear.
Absolutely. So, let's talk about the winners now that we've trashed enough on the losers. First of all, because if I don't say it now, I might not say it at all. This happened last show. We should at least point out that Chris Harper won the stage.
Yeah.
And that was awesome for Chris Harper. Aussie fans, I'm sure, staying up late to watch the race are very pleased with this. Harper's been going for that first Grand Tour stage win for a few years now. So good on Chris Harper for making that happen. All right, now that I've said that, let's go back to the GC. His former team, Visma, I think the race was very much lost by UAE, but that was only possible because Simon Yates did what he did. His team played it perfectly. We've seen in the past, I think 2 Tours de France, Visma talks about the race and their strategy like, it's okay, all the bad things that are happening the first 2 weeks to Tadej Pogacar, because we're going to win this in the 3rd week. And that's not what has happened. This Giro, seemed like the strategy they went in with. Yates really flew under the radar, and I'll have to say, now that, because we have made it clear how much of a dum-dum I was this morning, not expecting Yates to be this good, I'll pat myself on the back a little bit in that we did point out that Yates flying under the radar looked really good and seemed like he could do something. Somehow he flew under the radar despite being a Grand Tour winner, and they did leave it all to the final week.
It was Vuelta, so, and he does.
I almost want to stop the pod right now, but I'll soldier through. The Friday stage, bit of a dud for everyone who wasn't Del Toro, because he was able to defend, basically. Yates didn't look good. But at the end of the day, it really was going to come down to Fenestra, and I think the fact that Visma clearly had this as their plan, this final week as their plan, it says, like, they deserve credit. I mean, this was the big losing of the race was only possible because Yates' legs were great too. I mean, he opened up a big gap.
As soon as Wout pulled off, he attacked, and no one was anywhere close to him in that group. Yeah, and, it was a group of people who had been shelled from the break already. They weren't GC contenders, but still, like, after doing Fenestra, after doing the entire Giro, you got to feel like it's a situation where one of the dudes from the break could kind of like linger for a couple of seconds. It was gone.
Yeah. Because the comments right now are really good, I'm gonna go back to trashing on UAE real quick. I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B. Cafe Rider pointing out that Del Toro should have done this by himself. I agree with that. On the other hand, if his DSs were saying don't cooperate, which it seemed like they were on the Fenestre, it is kind of hard to blame the kid, because he's a kid. He's 21 years old, for playing this not perfectly. At some point he should have figured it out, but at some point the DSs should have said something. I think it's a little bit of both. I think both parties deserve the blame for this. Okay, back to Simon Yates and Visma. the weight of expectation of going over the Finestra, if you're Simon Yates, had to be a lot. And for him to pull through and win it, it makes it extra special. He's a rider he's been around the block a few times. I mean, at this very race, he seemed like he was going to
this
win it.
mountain.
Yeah, and I think it's really impressive, not only the legs and the team tactics and all the stuff that Visma did perfectly today, but just the fact that he was able to live up to the hype, because we've seen Simon Yates not live up to the hype quite frequently over the course of his career. Unfortunately, I mean, like, there's just been a number of times where the most spectacular one was when he hyped himself up by saying that his rivals should be shitting themselves, which is maybe my favorite press conference moment in the history of cycling.
To be fair, an unusually interesting statement from
Absolutely.
Yates.
I loved it. I'm glad he said it. Yeah.
Atypically interesting, you might say.
This race was the bounce back effect was really poignant and just like, it's a great story and poetic and all that great stuff. So good on you, Simon Yates.
I also think, like, he prepped well for this climb. It wasn't like anything changed when he hit the gravel. I think he had, I don't know about width, but coming down Finestra, there were a couple of drainage impacts where the rear end of his bike looked like the tire was softer than you would expect. And I think he probably went into that stage, running a little bit lighter, ready for that terrain section. He knew that he couldn't stand up like he normally stands up. Most of those tight corners, he was parked right on the saddle. He didn't. If anybody was expecting him to fall apart there, as maybe has happened in the past, he clearly came in ready to not fall apart, which is good.
I mean, and on a similar note, he also got his gap on the paved section of the climb so that he would. I mean, I think they talked about this in the broadcast, so that he wouldn't necessarily have to spend all that much time out of the saddle on the gravel section, which it's a 9% climb. Like, being out of the saddle it's not impossible, but like, being out of the saddle on gravel on 9% is very difficult. The preparation was there. And after a year and a half of being just not great, it just, everything went right for Visma today. And you have to credit the DSs, you got to credit Yates himself, and obviously Van Aert deserves a huge amount of credit for being in the right place at the right time and then just doing Van Aert things. Is this the beginning of a Visma resurgence, Eric? I don't know, but I hope so, because I think a Visma resurgence would be good for the sport, given the chokehold that UAE has had on the Grand Tours.
I mean, it's still relatively recent, right? Like, Pogačar very clearly lost to Tours de France to Visma 2 years ago. So
yeah, definitely. Well, at the end of the day, Yates comes away with, it's like, what's almost 4 minutes, I think, was the final gap.
It was so big that it didn't really matter anymore, right? It was like,
which, again, to credit us, because I do want to give ourselves the pats on the back when we can. We've been saying that this is going to come down to a lot more than just these 10 seconds here, 10 seconds there, because there were other times in this race where UAE did dumb stuff. But those dumb things were a little more excusable because they were probably only going to amount to 10 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever. Today's dumb stuff amounted to a lot more than that. It, in fact, amounted to, at the end of the day, Yates having a 3 minute and 56-second lead over Del Toro. Carapaz 4:43 down. If you look at just the final standings of this Giro, it looks like it was a blowout, and it wasn't all that interesting.
That's, I think a lot of people are frustrated with they feel like kind of Del Toro gave the race away, but I think after this Giro we've had, it's a lot more satisfying, whatever that means, to have a wild day like this, to have a day that didn't look like yesterday. That wasn't just the leader, protecting their lead and controlling the race with the power of their team. We got something that was really unique and interesting and fun. And I think people who are upset about UAE maybe like kind of ruining the race for them are not taking in the whole picture. Or
I agree with that.
Forgetting what a lot of these finishes tend to look like.
I agree with that. I think we're going to have lots of thoughts over at escapecollective.com. I think one of those thoughts coming from the boss, Kaylee Fretz, our editor-in-chief, he's feeling pretty negatively towards.
So should we spill some tea on Kaylee on this?
Well, I think we should just tell people to go read the story. That everyone.
Well, true. It's true. Kaylee is emotionally disinclined to be happy.
He's displeased with UAE's ride today. I don't think that necessarily means he was even rooting for them. I just think he thinks they kind of threw the race.
He
But yes,
may
it
have
was
been a little
also
cranky about the overall outcome of the
it was also
Giro too.
only possible because Simon Yates and Visma did what they did, and they deserve all the credit for it. I want to kind of switch gears a little bit to talk about maybe some unheralded riders. I feel like Van Aert is sufficiently heralded, so I don't really need to herald him. Everyone knows that he did this, yeoman's work today. I want to give a lot of credit to the EF domestiques over the past week who aren't going to get that credit because their rider didn't win the race.
I mean, not the whole team. Like, it wasn't just the guys. Like, Casper Asgren's a stage winner this year, and was like strung the field out for 10K running into Finestra. Like,
Yep.
no one on this team was too cool to play ball with this.
I don't know that Yates would have been able to do what he did without EF doing what they did. And at the end of the day,
1,000%.
Yates is the one who wins. And so we should give him credit for, the 4D chess of letting EF do that. But we should also say that let's say Casper Asgreen, Jefferson Cepeda, Owain Doull, Mikel Honore, Darren Rafferty, James Shaw, and Georg Steinhauser. Those are your 8 domestiques around 7 domestiques around Richard Carapaz. They should get credit for doing, I think, everything they were probably told to do today. And also over the course of the week, they look great in the beginning of the week as well. So good on you, EF, for helping make this race interesting. And also good on you, Carapaz, for, being the one over the last few days who has generally taken it to Del Toro, right up until today when it was Yates who took it to Del Toro. Although Carapaz tried, but Del Toro was on his wheel every time.
Well, that's the thing. We don't know that Del Toro wasn't on the radio like, hey, I can hold Carapaz, but I can't close these gaps. I can ride really hard for 30 seconds or 40 seconds, but I can't do it for 5 minutes. Like, maybe that was the case. We don't know.
Yeah, but the we don't know aspect of it, I think, is what's most frustrating. Like, it is entirely possible that Del Toro was not good enough today, right? Like, it's entirely possible that UAE's tactics, if they had played it differently over the last half an hour, wouldn't have caught Yates. That UAE doing things differently actually didn't matter in the end. That's possible. We don't know that, though, because they didn't even try. Like, they didn't give us the opportunity to really see Del Toro going all in. And so we'll never know. And that's why we're so critical of them. And I think they deserve the criticism. Oh, well. At the end of the day, Yates wins. Harper wins. I think we win because it was a pretty fantastic final mountain stage of the Giro. All told, really, really fascinating 3 weeks. I mean, I guess the top 3 riders, maybe top 4 or 5 favorites coming in, top 3 favorites coming in, because I would think it would be. You'd think Roglic, Ayuso, and the other Yates are probably your favorites to win this.
And how stoked is Roglic about this now? Right? Is he like, no one is gonna remember that Roglic had like a super disappointing, unremarkable. Like, he is now completely out. He is a sub narrative of a sub narrative. He can just kind of be like, whew, no one's gonna be looking my way, being like, what a bad Giro Roglic had.
I am a little kind of bummed out that Ayuso wasn't there and fully fit to be involved in this stage.
That could have changed the result completely, right?
Very much.
Ayuso is in 3rd place or 4th place.
We also could have seen more of this, like, intra-team who's the leader, and then they screw it up that way, which also would have been entertaining. A lot of what ifs there. In the end, Simon Yates is going to win the Giro, unless in the next 24 hours something crazy happens on the final. I sure hope it doesn't. That would be because we decided
Del Toro attacks from the gun.
Could happen, maybe.
UAE team time trial from the go.
I think the likeliest thing that causes catastrophe is a crash, and hopefully that doesn't happen. Right? If there's attacks from the gun and that changes the outcome of this race, this 4-minute gap, we might have to come back and do another emergency show here. But unless something catastrophic happens on the final day, your GC top 5, Yates with a massive lead that I can't say I saw this coming. Almost 4 minutes over Del Toro, Carapaz 3rd. Derek G is going to miss out on the podium, but he had a great ride. And then Damiano Caruso actually ends up being the one, not Antonio Tiberi. It's Damiano Caruso, the wily veteran who was once as high as 2nd in this race, rounding out the top 5 for Bahrain. Giulio Pellizzari had a great final week.
Yeah.
He
wonder,
to me
wonder what he could have done if.
Yeah, I think he's just outside of that level of like competing for the win, but it would have been really cool to see him.
I mean, he had at least a stage win in him. Yeah. Like the way he was riding.
Yeah. All things considered, fantastic finale to the Giro. Oh, Brendan McNulty's going to finish in the top 10. That's pretty great. And as is Egan Bernal. That's good for anybody who's been following Bernal for the last several years. Again, things could change on the final day, but they probably won't with a sprinter-friendly stage into Rome. Yeah, loved the Giro. Cosmo, you happy with this Giro?
I'm very happy with this Giro. I think it's. I'm a little curious to see how the sprint in Rome goes. Pedersen would probably be the first to tell you he's not like a sprinter. I think, as we saw today, like he's just a really strong rider, and I think it's really cool to see guys like him and Wout on a mountain day like this, getting in a break and driving and like going up the hill faster than people who, if they just rode in a bunch to the bottom and raced to the top, they couldn't compete with. But because it's hard riding all day, everybody doing work, like you see what a difference. Everybody talks about watts per kilo at threshold. And it's like, yeah, that matters if it's a 30-minute climb for time. But if it's a full day riding a bike, like it really is watts and calories and, knowing your body and not get it going into the red. Like that's cool to see. And it's something we didn't always used to see, I think, in cycling. I don't know. Anyway, I am curious to see how the sprint plays out.
Letting that move go at first on the climb, lulling foolish commentators into doubting him. Fortunately, they only said something on Slack and not on Twitter. Yeah. Anyway, I think we end on a high note here as we now go into the month of anticipation before the Tour de France. So obviously, the Dauphiné is coming up. The Tour de Suisse will give us a chance to see what's what. The Copenhagen Sprint will give us a chance to see what's what as well. That's a World Tour race this year. And then Tour de France is in 1 month and 1 week from now, I think. So you won't have to wait too long to find out how races were won. And in the meantime, head on over to Escape Collective for all of our race coverage over the course of June. Meanwhile, by the way, Unbound's going on right now. There's going to be plenty of stories.
The second best gravel race in the calendar
of the day. Yeah. But lots of good tech stories coming out of there, obviously, as well. So head on over to escapecollective.com, go sign up, become a member so that we can keep doing this and so that you can get all the access to all the stories we're writing so that you can see Kaylee's screed against UAE's tactics today. Yeah. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed the race. And we'll be back soon enough for more How the Race Was Won. Oh, shoot, I already said the name of the show, but I'm going to act like I didn't. I've been
messing it up.
Cosmo, who are you? What was this?
I'm Cosmo Catalano, and this was the How the Race Was Won podcast.